Hey guys, tonight we're setting up camp under a sky older than history, where the wind hums through spine effects and the stars aren't just lights, they're people, stories, warnings, and memories. A warm fire crackles by your feet, and behind you, someone carves an arc in the sand with a stick, murmuring in rhythm with the flames. This isn't a bedtime story. Not really. You're standing at the edge of a worldview so vast it wraps itself around the entire continent, one that tells you the sky isn't up. It's all around you. And it's watching. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and what time it is where you are. Let's see how far these stars reach. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You kneel by the fire pit, red dust curling between your toes. Beside you, a thin elder with eyes like river stones dips his fingers into the ash and begins tracing circles, slow, deliberate. This isn't doodling. These marks are old, older than any alphabet. They're memory cues. They match the sky. In fact, they are the sky. One curl for a star that rises in March. A line of dots for the seven sisters, always fleeing a hunter who never catches them. Though in one version, they do turn and trap him. Don't let anyone tell you dreaming stories don't know how to twist a plot. You've heard the stars are used to track seasons. Sure, everyone learns that in school. But tonight, you find out that's barely scratching the surface. Because when he brushes his hand through the ash and begins again, this time whispering, not in English, not in any written down tongue, you feel it. The sky isn't distant anymore. It's reaching down, alive in the smoke, wrapping around your shoulders like a grandmother's shawl. Historians still argue whether Aboriginal constellations were codified systems or fluid mnemonics. But out here, that debate feels laughable. Of course they shift. Why would knowledge fixed in one place work in a world where you walk everywhere and the sky follows you like a shadow? Tonight's constellation lesson is also a morality tale. That bright star over there? That's not just Alpha Centauri. That's the eye of a clever trickster who once swapped all the men's spears for emu bones and convinced them they were magic. Spoiler, they weren't. You giggle, then sober up. Because he paid for that lie with exile, chained to the stars forever, never to descend again. Except, one night every 73 years, he's said to blink. You lean back, eyes adjusting to the vast bowl above. So many stars. Too many, honestly. You blink and your vision blurs, the shapes losing meaning. But then, bam, a single hand gesture from your elder and it clicks. You're not looking at stars. You're looking between them. That gap over there? Emu neck. That curve? Her back. She's massive, carved in shadow, stretched across half the sky. And her eggs, those are real. You'll find them downriver in 2 weeks, exactly when her chest rises over the eastern hills. Coincidence? Hard no. Aboriginal star lore doesn't predict events. It remembers them. Even the fire seems quieter now. Like it's listening, too. Your elder draws one final shape, 2 parallel lines, and pauses. He says this one's not a constellation. It's a boundary. Some stars, he mutters, are only for the women. You glance sideways, wondering if you should ask. You don't. And suddenly, you're not a kid with a telescope anymore. You're a listener in a tradition older than pyramids, older than Homer, older than Stonehenge. One that doesn't light up the night sky, but draws from it, like a well. You shiver, not from cold, but from the weight of it all. And behind you, the wind carries the faintest smell of eucalyptus and something else. Maybe memory. The next morning, you're up before the sun, not because someone woke you, but because the land did. The birds begin with clicks and chirrs so sharp you feel them in your teeth, and the red-gold horizon pulls itself higher like a stage curtain rising. But what really gets your feet moving is the memory of last night, that quiet voice tracing sky stories into ash. That idea that maps don't have to be made of paper. They can be sung. They can breathe. You stretch, sip something hot from a smoky tin mug, and begin walking with the group. You're told today's trail follows a map line. Not a road, not a route, but a melody. It's passed down not by directions, but by verses, and if you get the verses wrong, you get lost. Not metaphorically. Like, actually lost. That rock formation up ahead? One stanza. That twisted tree? Another. Get the order right and the land unfolds like it's expecting you. Historians still argue whether these so-called songlines were literal or symbolic. But the moment you hit your stride and the elder begins to sing, low and rhythmic, you feel it in your ribcage. This isn't symbolic. It's a GPS with soul. You pass no signs, no landmarks marked by human hand. But the story tells you when to turn. You know it's time to drink water because the verse says a goanna lick dew from a stone right here, under this exact sheoak. And like clockwork, there's moisture waiting in the hollow. At midday, you rest beneath a rock overhang while flies try to steal your lunch. Someone points upward. There's a faded ochre painting just above your head. Lines, dots, arcs. Not for art. Not for ceremony. It's a verse, painted instead of sung, in case the singers ever fall silent. We don't forget here, your guide murmurs. Not as long as the land's still breathing. The map continues. Not forward, but all around you. You're told that the constellations shift as you move, not because the sky changes, but because your perspective does. What looks like a spear from here becomes a fishhook 3 valleys east. And from the high dune tomorrow morning, it'll be a snake's spine. Same stars. Different meaning. Your feet ache. The sun sharpens. But you keep walking, because now every tree branch and creek bed feels like it's telling you something. And here's the thing, the people who made this map never used writing. They didn't need it. They embedded navigation into stories about love triangles between stars and turtles, tricksters who couldn't resist climbing trees, and possums with surprisingly petty revenge plots. One version even claims there's a mountain that wanders each year to get a better view of its favorite constellation. When you laugh, they just smile. You think it's a joke. But what if it's a warning? You pass a stone with scorch marks older than your grandparents, and a tiny pile of white shells in the middle of the desert, seashells, miles from the nearest coast. Your guide shrugs. Left by travelers from the north, long ago. They followed stars here, too. You suddenly realize this map you're walking? It doesn't just show space. It shows time. Every turn, every verse, every celestial landmark remembers not just location, but when someone walked it before you. The dreaming doesn't separate past and present. You're in all of it at once. You catch your breath on a ridgeline just before sundown. The elder stops, squints at the sky, and points to a spot just above the horizon. There, he says. When that one rises, the eels run. And when it vanishes, the babies come. No dates. No calendars. Just stars. Reliable as breath. And then, you swear it, you hear the hum. A low vibration, somewhere between wind and chant. It's not in your ears exactly. It's in the soles of your feet, like the land's been waiting for you to finally listen. So you sit. You watch. And as twilight pulls its velvet cloth over the dome of the sky, you hum along, badly at first, then better. Somewhere, in a language older than memory, the map sings back. That night, you can't sleep. Not because it's uncomfortable, though, yes, the earth is a little lumpy and one beetle has very aggressive opinions about your blanket, but because something's different now. The stars are no longer scenery. They feel close, nosy even, like a crowd of silent relatives watching from above, curious to see if you'll mess up the story. You lie on your back, tracing the sky, trying to find something familiar. The Southern Cross? Check. But your eyes keep drifting toward a smudge of darkness you hadn't noticed before. Not a star. The absence of stars. A whisper beside you. You see her? You squint. And then, bam. There she is. The emu in the sky. But here's the twist. She's made entirely of negative space. Not the stars, but the shadows between them. Her long neck stretches across the Milky Way, her body a soft, smoky cloud of darkness, her legs trailing off behind. And suddenly, once you see her, you can't not see her. She's huge. Majestic. Slightly smug. Mainstream astronomy has no clue what to do with her. She's not a constellation in the Western sense, no connect the dots with sparkling stars. But in Aboriginal star lore, she's everything. A marker of time, of season, of ceremony. When her body appears to rise horizontally on the horizon during autumn, that's your cue to gather emu eggs. You can almost hear her laughing, if you're smart enough to find me, you're smart enough to eat. Historians still argue whether these dark nebulae constellations were widespread or regional. But the emu shows up in dozens of language groups across the continent, always shifting slightly, always shaped by local knowledge, but always there. And she's not alone. You're told that sometimes, On a clear night, the dark patches of the sky dance. Not literally, maybe, but in stories, yes. The emu once outran a hunter who threw a fire stick at her, and that flame is still visible, flaring red as Antares in the heart of Scorpius. Some say that star is the fire stick, frozen midair. Others claim it's her egg, stolen by a greedy dingo star who now hides on the horizon till dawn. There are versions where she's not an emu at all. In some regions, she's a crocodile slinking through the heavens. In others, a stingray. But every version knows what modern astronomy often forgets. The shadows matter just as much as the light. You lie there, trying to keep your eyes open, even as they water from staring upward. You remember someone saying, "We don't draw the stars. We draw the gaps." And suddenly it makes sense. Because anyone can memorize a star chart. But to feel what isn't there, that takes something else. Trust? Intuition? A bit of madness? Or maybe just patience? As the emu shifts westward, you catch a final glimpse of her beak dipping toward the trees. She's heading off for the night, maybe to join her sisters, those same 7 sisters you heard about on your first evening, still darting away from Orion, or Chimpa the hunter, depending on who's telling the tale. You get up, stretch your legs, and almost trip over a log. Except, no. It's not a log. It's a carved emu bone, placed deliberately in the sand. Someone left it as a teaching tool, maybe hours ago, maybe generations ago. It points to the sky. And yeah, its angle lines up exactly with the emu's neck. That's not coincidence. That's intention. And in a flash, you get it, these stories don't live up there in the stars. They live down here, in the bones, in the ground, in the dust that clings to your fingertips. You look back one more time. The emu is gone. But somehow, you feel like she's still watching. The morning begins in a hush, not a quiet born of sleepiness, but the kind wrapped in reverence. The group is already gathered, barefoot and still, facing east. You move to join them, barely making a sound. The air smells like dew and eucalyptus bark. And somewhere just beyond the visible blue, a light is preparing to climb. No one speaks, but you can feel it, something's coming. Then, slowly, it rises. Venus. The morning star. She appears without fanfare, no trumpet of orange, no blush of pink. Just a cold, brilliant flame suspended above the horizon like a bead of molten glass. Your elder leans toward you and murmurs, "She comes first. She sees everything before we do." To most modern stargazers, Venus is a planet. A bright one, sure, visible often just before sunrise or after sunset. But here, in this world, she is a presence. A being. A sister. A messenger. And also, depending on who's telling it, a mischief maker with a wicked sense of humor. You're invited to participate in a welcoming ritual. It involves standing in a semicircle, your palms facing the sky, and softly humming a note you don't recognize but somehow already know. It's gentle, low-pitched, and oddly comforting, like the land humming back. As the star hovers brighter, a story unfolds in whispered fragments. Once, Venus was not alone. She had a twin, brighter, sharper, always racing ahead. The two would dance together at dawn, weaving messages between sky and sea. But then the twin disappeared. Some say she fell in love with a comet and chased it into the sun. Others say she's still out there, waiting to return when the world is ready. Historians still argue whether these morning star rites served astronomical purposes or spiritual ones. But if you stood here, like you are now, watching the ritual unfold with your heart thudding against your ribs, you'd stop asking questions. Because it doesn't feel like a function. It feels like a reunion. In Yolngu tradition, the morning star, Barnamir, is more than just a cosmic object. She guides the dead to the spirit world. She whispers to the living. In some stories, she drags a long rope of light behind her, full of voices and songs too sacred to write down. When you stare hard enough at the dimming stars behind her, you almost see it, a faint silver trail curling like smoke. Your elder tells you to remember her face, not her brightness, but her arrival. Watch her timing, he says. She tells you when to plant, when to fish, when to stop traveling. Ignore her and the land ignores you back. No pressure, right? And just when you think you've heard it all, someone chuckles and says, "Of course, she also used to paint her face to impress a warrior who never looked up." You blink. What? Turns out, in some tales, Venus powdered herself with stardust, real diva behavior, to distract a certain star who only had eyes for the moon. So she lit herself up extra bright, made a scene at dawn, and still didn't get the guy. You try not to laugh, but it's hard. The sky is lightning now, and Venus fades. Not disappears, fades. Like she's turning her head and slipping behind a curtain, smug with the knowledge that she'll be back tomorrow, and you'll be waiting. And you will. Because once you've watched a group of people greet a planet like an old friend, you can't unlearn that kind of wonder. It reshapes your idea of routine. Sunrise becomes ceremony. Orbit becomes personality. And astronomy becomes something quieter, stranger, and far more intimate. As everyone breaks the circle, your elder touches your shoulder and says softly, "She saw you this time." You're not sure what that means, but you believe it. Later that same morning, you're led away from camp, not toward a river or a sacred tree this time, but to a quiet patch of cracked earth where the wind seems to forget its name. There's no shade, no ceremony, just silence, until your guide stops, crouches, and presses his palm to the ground. "This," he says, "is where the sky takes back its own." You glance around, unsure what you're looking at. Then you see them. Faint outlines in the dirt, curves, shallow depressions, arranged in a way that feels too intentional to be random. And suddenly it hits you. These are patterns. They're graves. But not just any graves. Star burials, he says, tapping the ground gently. Returned, not buried. They came from the sky. They've gone back. It sounds poetic, until you realize he's not being poetic. In many Aboriginal cultures, particularly among the Arurt and Yalangdu, there's a belief that some spirits originate in the sky, beings of light and memory who descend into flesh for a while, live a human life, then rise again. Death isn't an ending. It's a return ticket. Historians still argue whether these beliefs emerged independently across language groups or were shared through cultural exchange. But all over the continent, you'll find echoes of this same idea. Stars are ancestors. When one dies, it doesn't vanish, it simply shifts position. Some say that if a meteor falls not long after someone passes, it's a sign they made it home. Others warn not to look directly at bright new stars right away, because the spirit hasn't finished ascending. Give it time. Let it settle into its proper constellation. The grave markers here are made of nothing permanent. No carved stones. No plaques. Just mounds of earth, sometimes scattered with white ash or ochre dots that slowly fade with the weather. Because it's not about what we leave, your guide explains. It's about what rises. He points to a bright star just becoming visible in the deepening blue. That one, he says, was a dancer. She used to leap so high, it looked like she wanted to join the Milky Way. And then one day, she did. You listen, stunned, as he describes how burial rites are timed to match specific celestial events. A star cluster rising just before dawn. A red supergiant dipping beneath the horizon. It's not just ritual. It's choreography. A funeral by stellar appointment. And then comes the eerie part. He takes you to a nearby rock overhang, where faded handprints fan out like firework shadows. In the center, a series of dots, tiny, precise, form a map of the night sky. But it's not today's sky. It's the sky as it was 100 years ago, maybe more. How do they know? Because a dying elder named every single point before closing her eyes forever. She said she was putting the others back where they belonged. You sit down, heart thudding. This is beyond story now. It's history braided with astronomy, belief woven into observation. You think of how Western science names stars with catalog numbers and Greek letters. But here, names mean something. Kinship, origin, purpose. And some of them aren't said aloud unless it's night. You close your eyes, and for a moment you picture it, every star a relative, every meteor a returning soul, every night a family reunion you can only attend by looking up. Then your guide says something that lodges itself under your ribs. We don't fear death. We just listen for where it lands. That evening, as the first stars emerge one by one, you notice a small group standing apart, murmuring to a patch of sky. They're not praying. They're welcoming someone. You don't ask who. But when a new glimmer appears just above the southern hills, you smile. Whoever it was, they've made it back. By now, your internal clock is completely broken. Not in the bad way, no stress, no meetings, no alarms. Just unstuck. Like the rhythm of your body has finally synced to something older. Something shaped by stars instead of schedules. You wake in the middle of the night to the scent of smoke and sandalwood. A low fire has been lit again, not for warmth this time, but for marking time. Your elder sits cross-legged beside it, slowly feeding the flames with bundles of twigs tied in certain ways, at certain angles. Each crackle, each pop, each lean of smoke means something. These are campfire calendars, he says, not looking at you. The fire knows when the seasons turn. So we listen to it. And sure enough, each twist of the flame seems to echo a shift in the sky above. A slow red ember sparks when a certain star peeks over the ridgeline. A breeze kicks up as the Milky Way straightens its back. You sit cross-legged beside him and feel a little ridiculous. How can fire tell time? But then he tosses in a tightly wrapped knot of grass, and a strange blue shimmer lifts with the smoke. It rises, curling toward a cluster of stars that you now know as the canoe. But tonight, he calls it something else, the backbone of the wet season. You realize it's not just about what burns. It's about when it burns. Each clan, each nation, has its own version. Among the Wardaman people, for instance, the heliacal rising of certain stars marks the beginning of monsoon time. In other places, the Pleiades signal the return of specific fish. And everywhere you go, fire isn't just fire, it's a timepiece. Smoky, warm, and tickless. Historians still argue whether these calendars were scientific in the Western sense or intuitive lore passed down through trial and error. But watching your elder trace time with smoke and silence, you suspect that distinction was made by people who didn't spend enough nights under open sky. You reach forward, toss a stick into the flames, and watch the sparks jump. Too early, he says, shaking his head. That one's for when the turtles lay. Oops. But he doesn't scold. Just smiles and waits for the next breeze. When it comes, it carries a different scent, iron-rich, earthy. Somewhere, rain has touched the soil. That's her, he murmurs. The one who walks ahead of storms. Her feet stir up the wind. You follow his gaze to a faint, flickering star low on the horizon. Not bright, not famous, but important, because she appears every year a few nights before the first heavy rain. No one knows her name outside these lands. But here, she's legend. In another tale, that star was once a child who stole fire from the gods and ran into the sky to escape punishment. The fire she carried became lightning. The path she left became the seasons. You snort. So she's like a cosmic outlaw? Or a hero, he shrugs. Depends who's telling it. The fire burns lower. The sky deepens. And you feel yourself slipping into a rhythm that has nothing to do with clocks. Everything just happens when it's supposed to. Not because someone said so, but because the stars do. A breeze flutters the ashes, and he leans forward again. Now, he says, throwing in one last stick. Watch. The fire flares orange, then purple, then fades. Above, the morning star rises, right on cue. No alarm. No countdown. Just story. Just stars. Just right. The following day, you find yourself squinting through morning sun as someone smears red ochre across your cheeks. It's not paint for battle or decoration, it's a disguise. A gift. A trick. For Venus, your guide says with a grin, when she's in one of those moods. You raise an eyebrow, but he just laughs and hands you a feathered armband. She'll think you're someone else. Might leave you alone. This is not science class. This is not NASA. This is meth, mischief, and memory. Because in some regions, Venus isn't always the gentle morning star. Sometimes, she dresses up and causes chaos. Especially when she rises in the evening. They say she puts on war paint. Not red, but white, bright as polished bone. That's when she becomes the evening star, and that's when the stories shift. Among some groups, she's no longer the gentle god of souls. She's a tempter, a dancer, a challenger to the moon's authority. In one tale, she tricked a band of warriors into marching the wrong way for 2 full weeks by dazzling them into thinking she was the North Star. Plot twist, she was south. Very south. You're told she once married the moon, too. For a brief time, they lit the sky together, one at dusk, one at dawn. But then came an argument. Some say it was about whose light was brighter. Others say it had to do with a stolen fire stick and a kangaroo hide cloak. The details vary, but the result's the same, divorce by skyfire. Historians still argue whether these stories evolved as mnemonic devices for Venus's complicated retrograde pattern or reflect genuine mythological archetypes. Either way, they're sticky. You remember them. They linger. You gather around a ceremonial space, not marked by stone, but by silence. Just a cleared circle of earth, ringed with feathers, ashes, and one smooth stone that glints suspiciously under sunlight. It looks ordinary until Venus begins to brighten in the afternoon haze, and the stone glows faintly purple. No one comments. That's just what it does. You sit cross-legged and listen. The story today is not for comfort. It's a warning. Once, Venus disguised herself as a wandering girl with hair like starlight. She asked for shelter. Each camp turned her away, except one. A young man gave her food, a blanket, and a place by the fire. The next morning, she was gone, and so were half the stars in the sky. He'd accidentally married her. And when she left, she took her dowry, the stars of his people's ceremony. He wandered blind for years before another constellation offered to return what was stolen if he passed 3 tests. He failed the last one. The stars never came back. You're told this is why a certain cluster near the Southern Cross has a gap. Look closely. It's there. You glance up. You see it. The wind shifts, and you remember the pain on your face. Why the disguise, you ask. Your elder smirks. Just in case she's still feeling cheeky. Venus brightens. She's brilliant now, like a drop of molten ice hovering just above the trees. It's hard to believe something that beautiful could cause mischief. But you've learned by now, the stars aren't innocent. They carry grudges. They play games. And they never forget. Someone begins a chant, soft, irregular, almost lazy. But each beat matches Venus's movement. You don't notice it at first. Then it clicks. She rises with rhythm, with story. And you suddenly feel very, very small. Which, strangely, is comforting. Because here, being small doesn't mean being lost. It means you belong to something huge, complicated, wild, full of painted planets and laughing ancestors. And maybe a star or two who still enjoy messing with travelers. You're walking again. Not because you have to, there's no fixed destination, but because the land asks it of you. Your group moves in a slow line across cracked ochre flats, single file, like ants tracing some invisible scent trail. Only it's not invisible. It hums. You feel it in the soles of your feet before you hear it. A low, pulsing vibration, barely more than a suggestion, like the earth itself is humming an ancient melody just out of reach. And when the elder starts to sing again, softly, rhythmically, you realize it's not a performance. It's a key. You've just stepped onto a song line. Now, the word makes it sound tame, like something from a folk album or a concept from a linguistics paper. But out here, it's alive. The song is the path. The path is the memory. And you? You're part of the choir now. You hum along, awkward at first, matching vowel sounds you don't understand, mimicking pauses and rests that seem to line up with passing trees, termite mounds, rocks. A formation shaped like a dog? That's a lyric. A bend in the creek? That's a verse break. In the dreaming, the dream time, these songs were first sung by the ancestors as they walked across the newly formed earth, shaping rivers, carving hills, naming plants and animals with every step. What they sang became the world. And walking the same path, humming their songs, is how you keep it alive. Historians still argue whether song lines are literal topographic records or spiritual allegories. But after 30 minutes of walking to a melody that guides your feet better than a GPS ever could, you stop caring. It just works. And here's the wild part. The song changes depending on who you are. Your skin name, your moiety, your clan, all these things determine how you hear the line. To some, a passage might describe a lizard hunt. To others, the same verse is about rain spirits arguing over who gets to flood the creek first. It's like each person carries a decoder ring in their blood. You reach a patch of desert where the wind picks up, whipping past your ears in sharp staccato bursts. Someone laughs. The spirits are singing backup vocals. Okay, it's a joke. But also, is it? A few hundred meters later, the elder points at a flat, jagged rock and starts tapping it with a stick in perfect rhythm. The beat bounces, echoes, turns musical. That one remembers, he says. The stone is hollow. When you tap it just right, it sings. Not loudly, not tunefully, but definitely sings. And suddenly, the path isn't just under your feet. It's in the air, in your breath, in your bones. The whole landscape is a library without shelves. The songs aren't just directions. They're survival instructions. Who owns which waterhole? which bush fruits to eat when that constellation shows up, which ancestor you don't talk about near that tree because he's still testy. You stop at a rock wall smeared with handprints and faded spirals. That's a verse marker, your elder says. You're allowed to rest here. He sits. You sit. And the others keep humming. Not for performance. For maintenance. Because if you don't sing the song line, it forgets you. And if enough people forget, the land forgets how to speak. That's not poetry. That's law. You glance upward. Even the sky seems to pause. A cloud shaped like a fish hook drifts across a moonless blue. Somewhere in the line, someone is singing about fishing rights. You swear the breeze smells like salt water. You close your eyes and hum again. Not perfectly, but sincerely. And for a moment, just one flicker of time, you swear the path hums back. Tonight, you're back beside the fire, but not at camp. You're further inland now, where the horizon has no buildings, no fences, just rolling silhouettes of Spinifex hills and ancient, weather-beaten termite towers that look like they're mid-sentence. The sky here is thick with stars, so many, it almost feels rude not to greet them individually. And then someone points up and says, that one there. Canoe. You follow the line of their finger to a streak of brightness across the Milky Way. At first you see stars, just the usual dazzling scatter, but then your eyes adjust. The longer you stare, the clearer it becomes. A long vessel, bow pointed east, carved in light. It's not a Western constellation. It doesn't come with a Latin name or Greek backstory. This is a canoe, and it's full of people. You're told the Yalingda people call it Julpan, a canoe carrying ancestral brothers who journeyed across the sky, fishing and laughing and telling stories. Until, that is, one of them broke sacred law by eating forbidden fish. The result? They were all lifted into the heavens as punishment, or preservation, depending on who's telling it. Historians still argue whether Julpan aligns with Orion's belt or another star group, and how it maps across regional variations. But out here, under this sky, it's clear, the story isn't just about the stars. It's about what you're not supposed to forget. Your elder crouches next to you and begins drawing in the dust again, this time a long boat shape, then stick figures inside, one marked with an X. The greedy one, he says. You want to ask what happened to him. But then he gestures upward and says, still drifting. And just like that, the sky becomes a slow-moving river. Other people arrive at the fire. An elder from another clan takes out a long reed pipe and begins to play, not a melody, exactly, more like a soft drone. The sound rises upward as someone sings a verse about the canoe catching fish made of fire. You glance up again, and just south of the canoe, a small constellation twinkles red. See that one? Someone whispers. Ghostfish. It follows them. Ghostfish. Okay. You stare harder. That's definitely just a star, right? But now you can't unsee it, the faint shimmer of something trailing behind the canoe, always just out of reach. And when someone throws a pinch of something into the fire, maybe crushed leaves, maybe bone dust, you smell ocean. Actual ocean. Salty, fishy, windy. You're nowhere near the coast. Still, you taste sea spray in your throat. Some say that canoe landed once, your elder says suddenly. Right near Arnhem Land. Left behind a shell that sings. You frown. Like, metaphorically? No, he says flatly. It literally sings. When you breathe on it. Okay then. In some stories, the canoe never stops traveling. It glides across the sky, dipping beneath the horizon, returning with new stories each season. One version claims it once rescued a woman from the jealous moon. Another says it carries the dreams of unborn children, dropping them like pearls into wombs when the time is right. You look up again, tracing its arc. The canoe's outline pulses softly, made from stars you never noticed before. Stars that weren't part of any chart you memorized in school. You wonder how many other vessels are sailing overhead that your eyes never learned to see. A young boy beside you hums the Julpan tune, off-key, a little too fast, and is gently corrected. You don't rush a canoe, someone teases. Let the tide carry it. So he tries again. Slower. Wiser. And you listen, breath held, as that long celestial canoe drifts gently through the night, its ghostfish trailing behind, its passengers humming verses older than memory, longer than time. And maybe, just maybe, they're humming back. It's past midnight when it happens. The air stills. Not quiet, still. Like even the insects are holding their breath. And then someone, somewhere behind you, says, "Don't speak. Watch." You follow their gaze upward. The moon is full, bright, casting silver shadows across the sand. But it's wrong somehow. Too pale. Too quiet. And then, slowly, impossibly, it begins to vanish. Not all at once. First the edge dulls, like someone shaded it with charcoal. Then the curve of shadow deepens, crawling across the white disk like a spider. A lunar eclipse. You know the term. You know the science. But out here, you don't feel like a spectator. You feel like prey. The group stirs, rising slowly. No one runs, no one panics, but there's a tension in the air like dry lightning. A few people start whispering, words you don't understand, but the rhythm tells you they're old. Protective. Not afraid, exactly. Just alert. The moon is being eaten, someone says softly. And that's exactly what it looks like. To many Aboriginal nations, eclipses aren't just events. They're warnings. Symbols of imbalance. Some say the moon is being swallowed by a giant spirit or a sky serpent. Others say it's a husband hiding from his angry wife, which might explain the jagged bite marks. Either way, it means something has gone out of order. Historians still argue whether eclipse lore was predictive, observational, or ceremonial. But out here, as the moon fades into rust-colored shadow, you stop caring about the debate, because the fire is dying, and the stars are brighter than ever. Your elder turns to you and says, "Now is when the world listens." You're told not to sleep during an eclipse. That's when souls wander, looking for bodies to borrow. That's when old wrongs float closer, drawn by the dimmed light. If you stay awake and still, they pass you by. But if you call attention to yourself, laugh too loud, cry too hard, they might notice. And if they do notice, well, let's not find out. So you sit, silent, upright, watching as the last curve of light slips away, and the moon becomes a dull, bruised pearl. Someone tosses a line of white powder, crushed shell, maybe, around the fire pit. A protective circle. You stay inside it. A boy near the edge asks what happens if the moon doesn't come back. A girl answers matter-of-factly, then the tides will freeze and the sea will forget its way home. That's a pretty good incentive to keep watching. You think of all the times you stare at the sky through a telescope, calculating light years and orbits. But no science book ever told you how to sit with an eclipse. How to hold your breath and wait for the world to exhale. Then the elders begin to hum, not songs this time, but tones. Deep, throat-borne pulses like the call of distant thunder. It vibrates through the ground, up your legs, into your ribs. And above, the shadow hesitates. You don't see it shift, but you feel it. A slight loosening of the stars. A softening of the edge. And then, light. A sliver. A crack. The first glint of silver returning. The hum grows louder. Not a celebration. A negotiation. And the moon accepts. Bit by bit, the shadow retreats, and she returns to her full round face, tired maybe, pale from the ordeal, but whole. The group relaxes. Someone laughs softly, the first sound in nearly an hour. The fire flares, unprovoked. The circle is complete. You look around, heart steadying. Everyone begins to stand, stretch, brush dust from their legs like they'd just come back from something far away. You realize the eclipse wasn't a show, it was a moment shared. With the land. With each other. With something deeper than either. You stand too. And the moon, full and proud again, rises higher, as if nothing ever happened. But you know better. At first, you think it's a joke. Someone nudges you in the side and says, "See that one there? That's your wife." You snort. "Which one?" "The bright one just above the riverbend tree. She picked you before you were born." You wait for a punchline. There isn't one. Instead, you're ushered to a flat patch of clay earth where a series of star maps have been scratched into the surface, not Western charts, not telescopic grids, but spirals and dots, each connected to names, kin groups, and what you're quickly learning is a very serious topic, marriage eligibility. Turns out, Aboriginal star lore isn't just about navigation or weather. It's about law. And among many language groups, particularly in Central and Northern Australia, the constellations help determine who you can and cannot marry, because the stars knew before you did. "You're a Eurija," someone says. "That means she must be Dua." Balance. You're trying to keep up, still blinking stars out of your eyes from last night's eclipse. The stars told you that. They remind us. We already knew. Kinship here isn't optional. It's not romantic either, not in the modern, swipe right sense. It's ancestral math. A kind of cosmic social contract. Every person belongs to a moiety, a half of the whole, and that identity ties you to everything, plants, animals, ceremonial roles, even celestial bodies. And if you mess it up, if you marry the wrong person, you don't just break a rule. You break the pattern. Historians still argue how strict these star kinship systems were over time. Some suggest they were metaphorical frameworks. Others believe they governed real-time decisions as binding as court orders. Out here, you can feel the weight of it. It's not superstition. It's structure. Your guide gestures to 3 stars in a triangle. Those are the brother spirits. They point to the river when it's safe to cross. But they also look at who's courting who. If that 1 foot, he points to a fainter star, is too close, there's going to be gossip. You try not to laugh. So, star drama? He smiles. Star justice. A girl in the group's eyes. Last dry season, a boy tried to marry someone in his same moiety. Her grandmother told the sky. Next morning, their ceremony tent was full of frogs. You pause. Actual frogs? Hundreds. All looking at him. You're told that certain stars will brighten or dim depending on how well people follow these protocols. One constellation, known only to initiates, is said to have blinked out entirely for 2 weeks after a wedding went wrong in the 1970s. It returned only after a proper cleansing ritual was performed and an apology offered to the stars. And of course, there are love stories too. Not just rules. You hear about a pair of stars that drift closer every few centuries, like long-distance lovers slowly drawn back into orbit. Some say their reunion marks a season of abundance. Others claim it triggers heavy rain and awkward silences. You sit back and think of your own relationships. How messy, how impulsive, how unaligned with anything cosmic or orderly. And then you glance up, wondering how different things might feel if the sky was watching and keeping score. Later, you're given a ceremonial ochre on your forehead and asked to lie flat, arms by your side, heart open. Above you, the stars blur slightly, then sharpen. A breeze touches your cheek. She's up there, someone whispers. She sees you now. You don't know who she is. But maybe that's the point. You're lounging beneath a papabark tree, fingers dusty from tracing lines in the sand, when the elder squints at the horizon and says, "Stone's coming." You sit up. "A what?" He points upward, clear blue sky, no clouds, no sign of anything but heat shimmer. "Stone," he says again. "Sky rock." Message. You're about to ask if he means a meteorite when a thud echoes across the plain. Not a boom. Not a crash. Just a thud, as if the earth exhaled sharply. Every head in the camp lifts. No one speaks. No one panics. They just listen. That night, after a short walk across scorched grass and whispering shrubs, you arrive at the crater. It's not enormous, maybe the size of a waterhole, but the edges are fresh, still steaming faintly under moonlight. A rock the size of a football sits at the center, buried halfway into the red soil. Glossy. Charred. Is it recent, you ask? Someone shrugs. Recent enough. For many Aboriginal groups, meteors aren't random. They're messages, sometimes warnings, sometimes gifts, occasionally a rather dramatic RSVP. Among the errant, a falling star can signify the death of someone far away. Among the Luritja, a meteorite might mark the site of an ancient wrongdoing. And in some stories, it's simply an ancestor deciding to drop by. Historians still argue whether Aboriginal oral traditions accurately recorded real meteor events, like the Henbury crater field impacts thousands of years ago. But even geologists admit, some of these stories come awfully close to describing events we only recently confirmed with satellites. Back at the crater, a young boy walks carefully to the edge and drops in a handful of white sand. For the spirit, he says. So it remembers where it came from. The adults nod solemnly. You're told not to touch it. Not yet. It hasn't finished landing. That's not about physics, it's about intention. The stone has more to say. You just have to wait for the right person to hear it. Later, by the fire, a new story is shared. Once, a star fell in love with a woman. He followed her from the sky, disguised himself as a bird, and waited near her camp. When she sang alone one night, he dropped from the heavens to join her, but the impact frightened her tribe, and they buried him under rocks to stop the world from shaking. Now, whenever someone sings alone at night, he listens. And sometimes, if her voice is right, he falls again. You don't sleep much that night. Your guide tells you about a time when a meteor landed nearby and was promptly declared a marriage proposal. The woman accepted. That's why she walks funny now, he says. You laugh, until you notice everyone else nodding very seriously. In another tale, a star fell as punishment. A man broke sacred law, so the sky dropped a stone to remind the community. It broke no trees, your elder says. It broke trust. The impact site is still off limits. You begin to realize, these stones don't fall onto the land. They fall into the story. And once they land, they're woven in, just like anything else, just like you. Before sunrise, you're led back to the crater. The stone has cooled now. Someone sings a low chant while another smears it with ochre, then wraps it in cloth. It will be taken to a quiet cave, added to the pile of remembered things. A place where sky gifts wait until they're ready to speak. As you turn away, the elder looks up once more. Another streak of light zips across the horizon. Faint, fast, silent. He watches it go, nods. That one, he says, isn't finished falling yet. You wake to the sound of clapping sticks, sharp, steady, echoing like footsteps in a stone corridor. It's still dark, but camp is already stirring. Figures move by firelight, painting themselves in stripes of ash and red ochre, feathers tucked behind ears, bones tied at the wrist. Tonight, it seems, is not just another story night. It's sky hunt night. You're handed a carved wooden spear, not for throwing, you're told, but for holding, honoring. This is a memory stick, your elder says, tapping the smooth shaft. Not a weapon. It remembers how we used to hunt the stars. You're about to ask what that means when the dancing starts. It begins in a circle, slow stomping, dust rising with each beat, eyes turned upward. One of the younger boys leaps forward with exaggerated stealth, tracking something no one else can see. Then he flinches, spins, and points. Everyone follows his finger to Orion's belt, high and glowing white in the east. There, someone whispers. The three hunters. To most of the Western world, those three stars are simply Orion's belt. But to many Aboriginal traditions, especially in the central desert, they're the spears of ancestral hunters chasing prey across the sky. Their quarry changes depending on the region. Sometimes it's a kangaroo, other times a bush turkey, sometimes an outlaw spirit made of smoke. Tonight, it's a kangaroo. The dance shifts. The rhythm speeds up. Another dancer appears, painted with wavy lines to represent the creature. He darts, dodges, leaps, while the hunters close in. And overhead, the stars seem to shimmer with each movement. Historians still argue whether these sky hunt ceremonies were coordinated with the precise movement of constellations through the night or were more symbolic reenactments. But then again, how symbolic is it when each star's position matches exactly with every beat of the story? You glance upward. Orion is tilting. The kangaroo star, Rigel, perhaps, or Safe depending on the version, is lowering toward the western hills. The chase is nearing its end. The dance becomes more frantic, spears raise. One falls. Then another. The prey collapses in a dramatic tumble to the dirt. The dust settles. And then, stillness. No applause. No laughter. Just silence, respectful and complete. You don't realize it, but you've been holding your breath. An elder steps forward and speaks quietly, almost to himself. They catch him every year, but they never kill him. That's the rule. Otherwise, the stars would stop rising. You nod, not fully understanding but fully accepting. After the dance, you're led away from camp to a ridge where flat stones lean like old books. Someone lays the memory spear across two of them and begins telling the rest of the story. Long ago, three brothers set out to hunt a spirit kangaroo who had stolen the last fire from the people. Each night, they followed his glowing trail across the sky. One brother was clever, one strong, one fast, but none could catch the creature alone. So they worked together. But the kangaroo had a trick. He could shift shape, disappearing into clouds or disguising himself as a shooting star. Don't follow a falling light, the elder warns. It might be him. And now, they hunt still. Not to kill, but to chase. To keep the story in motion. You look up again. The belt has shifted. One star glints more brightly than before, almost like it's watching you. Someone presses the spear back into your hands. Now you've held it, they say, you'll see him every time. And you will. In cities, in deserts, from plain windows or hilltops. Every time you spot Orion's belt, you'll remember the kangaroo, the chase, the quiet rules of the sky. You head back to camp under the glowing trio of spears, thinking, maybe we didn't invent constellations. Maybe they invented us. You spend the next morning wandering through silence. Not just quiet, intentional silence. Words are soft, footsteps softer. The whole group moves like a thought sneaking through the back of your mind. You're following a narrow gorge into redstone country now, the walls climbing taller with every step. And just when the path squeezes tight enough to force you sideways, someone stops and raises a hand. You've arrived. The cave yawns open, not huge, but heavy, like a door that hasn't moved in centuries. Inside, it smells like heat and old dust, eucalyptus oil, and charcoal. The air is cooler, still, almost damp. You duck under a low arch and step into a room with no roof. And then you see them. Stars. On the ceiling, painted in ash-white dots, ochre streaks, and lines like spiderwebs. Hundreds of them. You feel your throat tighten. They match the sky, your elder says, voice hushed. But not today's sky. You glance up. The pattern is familiar but off, tilted somehow, stretched at odd angles. Then it clicks. You're looking at constellations as they would have appeared thousands of years ago. Before precession shifted the heavens. Before cities drowned the dark with light. This is a star map. Carved. Painted. Preserved. Some of the clusters you recognize. The Seven Sisters again. Orion's belt. Maybe even the canoe. But others are stranger. A circle of dots arranged in a spiral. A line shaped like a stingray's tail. One design looks like an eye split in half. That one's for eclipses, someone says. We come here when the moon needs reminding how to return. Historians still argue whether Aboriginal rock art was abstract symbolism or practical sky mapping. But when you trace the curve of a painted line and it aligns perfectly with the crescent of last month's moonrise, it stops being a question. It becomes awe. You run your fingers, gently, over the surface. The pigment is soft, dusty, fragile. Yet it's held its shape longer than most empires. On one wall, a single handprint stands alone, surrounded by dark space. She's marking the star that isn't there anymore, your elder whispers. What do you mean? It died. Long ago. But we still sing its name. You blink, startled. How did she know it died? We felt it. The silence deepens. This cave isn't just art. It's archive. Observatory. Shrine. There are no written labels. No signs telling you what to think. You just stand there, breathing in the dust of memory, while the past realigns around your shoulders like a cloak. Outside, the sky brightens, but in here, it stays eternal twilight. Someone begins humming softly again, not a full song, just a note held long enough to stretch across centuries. You sit. Others sit too. No one says it aloud, but you know, this is not a museum. This is a living document. And tonight, the stars above will mirror the stars in this cave, just briefly, just enough, for the story to continue. As you leave, you're told not to speak for a while. Let the stories settle, they say. If you talk too fast, they'll forget themselves. You nod, stepping back into sunlight, blinking like you've just emerged from underwater. The ridge looks the same. The hills still rise and burn orange. But the sky? It feels different now. Not just bigger. Closer. As if it remembers you too. The fire is blazing again, fed with desert pine that crackles like laughter. The air smells of resin and cooked flour cakes, but tonight, the real heat isn't coming from the flames, it's coming from the story. You lean in, elbow to knee, as the elder draws a crooked line in the dirt. Then a circle. Then a star. This, he says, is how the stars stole fire. You grin. Here we go. Long ago, the people were cold. Not from lack of sun. Australia has never been short on heat, but cold in their spirits. Fire existed, but it belonged to the stars. They kept it up there, hidden behind light, selfish and flickering. They thought we'd burn everything, the elder says with a sideways glance. They weren't wrong. A young man, clever and quick, decided he'd had enough. So he climbed the tallest hill, sang the oldest song, and tricked a cluster of stars into descending to Earth. Come down, he told them. Come dance with us. And they did, giggling, their fire trailing behind like long feathers. When they reached the ground, the The young man cupped their flame in his hands and ran straight into the dreaming. The stars, furious, chased him across the continent. They sent meteors, boiling winds, and a sky snake made of smoke. But the young man kept running. He passed through rivers that hissed and forests that shimmered. And finally, he handed the flame to an old woman who hid it in her cooking stone. And that's where fire's been ever since. Historians still argue whether stories like this were created to explain lightning, volcanic heat, or simply the mystery of combustion. But the pattern appears again and again across language groups. Fire is not discovered. Fire is taken, stolen, gifted, shared with risk. You're told this is why fire ceremonies still happen. Not just to warm food or light the night, but to remember the theft. Each flame is a fragment of that ancient heist. Every ember is a souvenir from the stars. One man tosses a twist of grass into the flames, and it flares blue. He winks. She's still angry. You glance up at the constellation above, one you now recognize as a sister of the flame. Not quite the Pleiades, but close. In this region, they're sometimes called the Fire Women, watchers of light, and sometimes thieves themselves. Another tale begins, this one from further north, where the moon once tried to steal the star's fire, failed, and had his face scorched as punishment. That's why he hides behind clouds, the elder explains. Embarrassed. The kids around the fire giggle. One of them mimics the moon slinking behind a tree. The elder chuckles but adds, "Don't mock him. He might hide the tides next time." The flames crackle louder. You begin to notice something strange. Every story about fire has a consequence. No one simply uses it. They bargain with it. They earn it. Or they pay for it, sometimes with silence, sometimes with stars. You think back to the meteor from a few nights ago. Maybe that wasn't a message. Maybe it was a match. Before bed, a woman walks the camp's edge with a bundle of glowing coals on a bark plate. She pauses at each direction, north, south, east, west, then blows gently, sending sparks into the darkness. "What's she doing?" you whisper. "She's reminding them we still have it," the elder says. "So they don't come looking." You lie down later with the scent of char still in your nose and a strange thought in your head. What if the stars aren't jealous? What if they're just making sure we don't forget? The next day, you're told to stay put. No walking, no songs, no touching anything you don't recognize. Even the fire is quiet, its usual snapping and crackling somehow subdued, as if it knows not to speak too loud. You ask what's happening. Your guide points to the sky. "See that shape?" You look up. A crooked V of stars low in the northern sky, oddly sharp against the pale blue. "Don't tell that story today," he says. "Or go near the river." You blink. Why? He doesn't answer right away. Just looks down at the earth like it might echo back. Eventually, he says, "Because the story is awake." Today's lesson isn't about myths or laughter. It's about caution. You're shown a few specific constellations that aren't sung during certain seasons, or at all. Some patterns, you're told, are active. Not every story is meant for sharing. Some are warnings, some are commands, and some are traps. One of the constellations you're shown is nicknamed the Split One. It appears near the horizon for only a few weeks each year. When it does, you do not swim. Not because of crocodiles or currents, but because that's when the water spirits remember old griefs. If you bathe in, you risk waking something that hasn't forgiven. You're not sure whether to laugh or shiver, but you stay dry. Historians still argue whether these avoidance constellations were connected to seasonal hazards, like monsoons, snake migrations, or poisonous plants. But out here, they're treated as laws, not suggestions. Laws written in sky bones. Later, you're told about a boy who mocked one of the forbidden stars. Just a joke, just a silly story told at the wrong time of year. The next day, a dust storm tore through his camp, flattening everything but the elder's shelter. Coincidence, the skeptics say. Answer, the rest reply. Your guide draws a curve in the dust, a snake-shaped cluster you now recognize from a few nights back. Don't speak her name outside ceremony, he murmurs. Don't even think it when she's low in the sky. So, of course, you think it. Immediately. You glance around, heart thumping. But nothing happens. Not right away. You're given a handful of white ash to smear behind your ears. To confuse her, your guide says. If she comes looking, you begin to understand that not all Aboriginal star stories are about teaching or guidance or origin. Some are safeguards. Some are fences. Some are locks meant to keep dangerous knowledge from slipping into daylight. There's another star cluster, 4 dots shaped like an eye, that you're not even allowed to look at directly. Not until you've earned your sandmark, the elder says, tapping the center of his forehead. And even then, only after sunset. That night, you're sitting quietly when the forbidden V rises higher. You feel its presence like a hot coal across your shoulder blades. No one points at it. No one tells its name. But you know everyone sees it. And that's enough. The silence grows heavy again. Even the crickets stop. Then a single child, maybe 6 or 7 years old, reaches forward and throws a pinch of salt into the fire. Sizzle. Everyone exhales. The spell breaks. One of the elders chuckles. She'll stay quiet now. And just like that, the tension lifts. You realize something simple and strange. Sometimes, survival is knowing when not to speak. When to bow your head. When to sit on your hands and let the stars pass overhead without mention. Not every sky shape is a bedtime tale. Some are warnings whispered in silence. And out here, silence carries just as much story. They tell you to wake early. Earlier than usual. Before the sun has even started stirring beneath the horizon. We have to clean the sky, your guide says, like it's the most normal thing in the world. You mumble something about needing tea first, but no one laughs. Everyone's already moving quietly, wrapping themselves in dark cloth, gathering bundles of dried leaves, small bowls of ochre powder, and, curiously, a long strip of bark soaked in water. You follow. Of course you do. Because by now you've learned, if you don't follow, the stars might forget your name. You hike up a nearby ridge as the eastern sky shifts from black to a kind of deep indigo bruise. Not quite light, but not dark either. That in-between time the elders call sky tilt. You reach a flat clearing and form a half circle. The wind here feels clean, almost polite. Someone paints a single white line from your cheekbone to your jaw, then hands you a bundle of eucalyptus. You're told to wave it slowly in front of your chest, not to bless yourself, but to send breath upward. The stars get dusty, your elder explains. Too many stories. Too many eyes. We give them room to see again. Historians still argue whether these rituals were tied to astronomical cycles or cultural psychology, but out here it doesn't matter. Because when the chanting begins, a slow, syncopated breath melody, you feel it shift. The air. The sky. The very idea of morning. The ritual is gentle. There's no shouting, no smoke bombs, no ecstatic dancing. Just movement. Rhythm. A kind of sweeping. One person walks the arc of the circle with the wet bark strip, brushing the air as if they're cleaning glass. Another sprinkles ochre dust into the wind, which curls upward like cinnamon in hot tea. It doesn't fall. It rises. Then comes the whispering. Each person steps forward and whispers a name into the open air. Not a human name. A sky name. Some are sharp and quick, one syllable, like sparks. Others are long and slow, shaped like wind around rocks. You don't know any of them. You don't need to. You're handed a small stick and told to draw a circle in the dirt, then break it with a line down the middle. That's how we open space, someone says. So the stars don't get stuck. You laugh under your breath. It sounds like celestial feng shui. But when you look up again, the Milky Way seems brighter, cleaner. And then the sun arrives. Not the fiery drama of most sunrises, but a soft yawn over the hills. The moment light touches the top of the tallest termite mound, the ritual stops. Just like that. Silence. Someone wipes their face. Someone else sniffs once, then grins. You feel it? Your elder asks. And you do. Not in a loud way. Just a quiet sense of balance returning. Like someone exhaled after holding their breath all night. In some stories, the stars dim not because of distance or dawn, but because they get cluttered with human noise, worries, secrets, lies. The sky cleaning is a reset. A once-a-year invitation for the cosmos to remember itself. You help gather the ashes, bury the used leaves, smooth the dirt. Nothing is left behind. Not a footprint. Not a whisper. And as you walk back down the ridge, you glance over your shoulder one more time. The sky doesn't shimmer. It glows. That evening, as dusk pulls across the land like a lazy blanket, someone remarks, "It'll be easier to find the canoe tonight." You ask why. The answer? She likes a clean sky. And for the first time since you arrived, you don't just see stars. You see space. And it's breathing easier now. That night, after dinner and a few quietly shared songs, the mood changes. Not heavier, deeper. Like the silence itself thickens. You're sitting cross-legged near the fire when your elder leans in and says, "Tonight, you'll hear about the time before time." You pause, confused. "Before dreaming?" you ask. He smiles. "During dreaming." But before the stars chose their places. And then the story begins, not with a bang, not even with a proper once upon a time. Just with a hum. A low, vibrating sound that starts in the chest and stretches into the night like smoke. Around you, the listeners sit perfectly still, their eyes on the fire, but not watching it. More like remembering through it. You learn that before the constellations fixed themselves in the sky, they walked. Literally. The stars were people. Beings. Some with faces, others with tails or wings or multiple eyes. They wandered the earth, hunting, swimming, mating, singing. Each one left impressions not just in rock and tree, but in story. One tale says that the Milky Way was once a wide river full of lightfish and bark canoes. But the river was stolen, coiled up and flung into the sky by a jealous snake spirit who didn't want humans to cross anymore. That snake still rides above us, hiding in the dark rift near the emu's spine. Look closely. You can see it. Another tale tells of the 7 sisters, who weren't just chased by a man. Sometimes, they chased him. In this version, the hunter becomes the hunted, and each time he thinks he's cornered them, they turn into trees, birds, even dust motes, always one step ahead. He'll never catch them, your elder says, but he'll never stop trying either. That's how we keep the sky moving. Historians still argue whether this kind of mythological structure implies a pre-astronomical attempt to rationalize celestial motion. But out here, no one's trying to rationalize. The stories don't explain the sky. The stories are the sky. You hear about a star who fell in love with a mountain and visited her every night until the other stars got jealous and dragged him back into orbit. That mountain still waits, her shadow shifting with the seasons, stretching toward his constellation like a lover leaning toward a dream. You ask what happened to the stars who refused to take their place. The answer is immediate. They're the ones we don't talk about. You glance upward. A blank patch in the sky. No stars. Just absence. Are they dangerous? You ask. The elder shrugs. Just stubborn. You laugh, but no one else does. Then comes the final tale of the night. The one reserved for only this phase of the moon, under only this part of the sky. It's about a time when all stars walked on Earth and humans lived above them, in a world lit from beneath. But a choice was made, a great reversal. The sky swallowed the stars, and humans were lowered to walk the ground. Why? You whisper. Because we forgot to sing, he says. So the stars left. But they didn't close the door. You sit there, still, as that final line echoes in your chest. The door is still open. And the sky, every night, waits to hear if we've remembered the song. You don't speak on your way to bed. You just look up and wonder if maybe one of them is still walking. And maybe, just maybe, you've already passed them. You lie awake that night, blanket up to your chin, eyes locked on the sky. Not scanning for constellations now. Just waiting. Listening. And then, as if cued by thought itself, it happens. A streak of light cuts across the dark. Not a sharp flash. Not a meteor screaming through the atmosphere. This one drifts, slow, elegant, hesitant. Someone nearby gasps. She's falling again. You sit up. Who? They don't answer. They're already standing, watching the long arc of light vanish behind a nearby ridge. The star who doesn't care about rules, your elder says, appearing at your side. She falls in love. All the time. With everyone. You blink. Is that allowed? A shrug. Didn't stop her. This story's different. Not solemn like the burial tales. Not terrifying like the forbidden constellations. This one is tender, messy, romantic, and ancient. You learn that not all stars were content with the roles assigned during the dreaming. Some wanted more. To roam. To love. To rebel. One fell for a human and tried to visit nightly, disguising herself as dew on a kulaman or the shimmer in a child's eyes. When the sky noticed, it pulled her back, but not all the way. Now she drops down once or twice a year, flaring just long enough to say hello. Another version claims 2 stars, once sisters, quarreled after falling for the same wandering spirit. They drifted apart for centuries, sulking at opposite ends of the sky. But every so often, they inch back toward each other. On those nights, people are told to light 2 fires and sit between them. Help them forgive, your guide says. They can't find each other alone. Historians still argue whether these tales refer to actual binary star systems or symbolic cultural metaphors. But you're beginning to notice, Aboriginal stories don't care whether a thing is real in the Western sense. If it moves people, it matters. There's even a word, in one dialect, that translates loosely to star yearning. It describes a kind of quiet ache, when you see a star blink and feel like it's meant for you. No logic. Just knowing. Tonight, you feel it. Another streak arcs across the sky. This one's quick, sharp, almost embarrassed. You're told it's the male half of a twin star system that got separated in a great sorting. Now he searches, endlessly, slipping between constellations, disguised as everything from fireflies to falling petals. Some children believe if you call out your name as he passes, he'll remember you and blink twice next time. You try it. Feel ridiculous. But still, you try. And nothing happens. At least, not right away. Then, just before you lie back down, you see a soft flicker near the canoe, 2 rapid pulses. Could be coincidence. Could be a plane. Could be a celestial wink. You grin into the darkness. No one teaches these stories from a chalkboard. No diagrams. No textbooks. You live them. By watching. By feeling. By sitting long enough for the sky to notice you're still awake. They say some stars return in pairs. Some arrive with gifts. And some, the best ones, leave behind a whisper. Not loud. Not even words. Just a feeling that stays behind your ribs, warm and echoing. And as you finally drift off, you wonder if anyone's ever fallen in love with a star who never once looked down, and whether she might still change her mind. The final night arrives without fanfare. No new ceremony. No dramatic tale. Just a hush that feels full. Like the air knows what's ending. You sit beside the fire with a few others, watching the smoke rise in slow spirals. The stars are already out, crowding the sky, familiar now like old neighbors. You can trace the emu with your eyes closed. You can walk the canoe line in your dreams. You've caught the morning star's moods, watched Venus flirt, heard the silence around the forbidden constellations. And now, all of it feels like home. Your elder joins you. Not with a lesson. Just a question. You've been talking to them? You glance up. Every night. He nods. That's good. Because some stars still listen. It sounds poetic, but you know he means it. And not in a metaphorical way. In story after story, stars respond. They blink, they fall, they answer. The ancestors don't just live in the sky, they watch. They wait. They respond to song, to silence, to sorrow. Especially to sorrow. You're told about a star that only appears when someone's heart is broken cleanly in two. Not the messy kind of heartbreak, just the quiet, necessary kind. The kind where you say goodbye without bitterness, and the sky rewards you with a single, pale glint on the southern horizon. That one means you'll be okay, he says. You're not alone. Historians still argue whether these kinds of emotional interpretations of stars served communal healing purposes or simply reflected a culture deeply in tune with the night. But to anyone who's ever cried quietly beneath the moon, the answer is obvious. And so, the night stretches on. You eat slowly. Talk less. The stars above you don't sparkle, they breathe. The emu stretches into the west, her wings still wide. The canoe glides forward, never arriving. The hunter still chases. The sisters still flee. And the sky? It remembers. Before you turn in, one final story is shared. Not dramatic. Not mysterious. Just honest. A young boy once asked his grandfather, "How do you know the stars are still listening?" The old man didn't answer. He just pointed to his feet. "The land listens too," he said. "And the stars watch where you walk." You sit with that thought a long while. Because now, you feel it. The stories aren't just about the sky. They're about how you carry it, how you move, how you speak, how you notice. A star doesn't listen because you ask it to. It listens because you've been quiet long enough to hear it first. You lie down one last time under this sky. A few embers glow nearby. The Milky Way arches overhead like a road with no end. And you whisper, not a wish, not a question, just your name. A soft thread to tie yourself to the night. And if you listen long enough, You swear something up there whispers back. And now, the stories have been told. The fire burns low. The songs have quieted. You feel the weight of dust on your skin, the echo of rhythm in your ribs, the softness of wind brushing past your cheek like a lullaby from something older than sleep. The stars are still above you, endless and familiar, but they no longer feel distant. You've walked among them now, on earth, in story, in silence. The emu's shadow fades into the west, folding her wings for rest. The canoe glides past the edge of your vision, not because it's gone, but because it's waiting for tomorrow's watcher. Venus has set, no longer flirtatious but gentle, respectful, quieter than usual. And the moon, well, he's back to himself, whole again, watching from a distance, no longer eclipsed by anything but your closing eyes. You're not just tired. You're full of flame and ash, of songlines and memory, of footsteps and feathers, of silence and sound. And as your breathing slows, the line between earth and sky softens too. So let it all settle. Let the dust be dust. Let the stars take back their names for now. You've heard enough. You've seen enough. Sleep now, with the stories curled beside you like dingo pups. Sleep now, with your name tucked safely among constellations. Sleep now, and let the sky remember for you. Good night. Sweet dreams.